What if extraterrestrials aren't travelers from the distant stars, but intelligences that exist beyond physical reality? Tonight, we explore a radical perspective that challenges physical ET theories and dives into consciousness, dimensions, and the true nature of non human intelligence.
Welcome to ParaTruth.
What's going on, Paratruthers? Welcome to another episode of ParaTruth Reborn. We are live on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and United Public Radio Network. My name is Justin, and today I am talking to Vincent Genna. Vincent is a global recognized psychic therapist, medium, and spiritual teacher with over 4 decades of experience blending intuitive insight with formal training in psychology and social work. Former hospice clinical social worker, he has helped hundreds of individuals and families navigate profound life transitions. Known as a visionary of our times, Vincent empowers people worldwide to heal deeply, expand consciousness, and better understand the unseen forces shaping our reality. Vincent, welcome to ParaTruth Reborn.
Well, thank you, Justin, for having me. I'm always excited to share any of this information about, and especially the truth about parapsychology and metaphysics and all those wonderful realities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and myself as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this show. So,
Yeah, and I'm so glad you are. Otherwise, people like me would never be able to get out into the world, our message, right? So thank you for that.
yeah, that's fair enough. So, what first led you to exploring this as extraterrestrials being more than just physical beings?
Oh, that's an interesting story because the only interest that I had in UAPs and extraterrestrials and anything along this line was from books that I had read. Communion was one of my first ones, and then I loved the movies that were out there. Right, Close Encounters or Cocoon. That was one of my favorites. Right, that was my greatest and deepest interest at that time. But what happened, and in your introduction, you used the word consciousness and the conscious realm. Well, from doing this work as a psychic therapist and a medium, obviously I'm tapping into a higher consciousness and my own as well as other realities. And what happens is as you open up that door, it's like a floodgate, Justin. And when you do the proper healing, internal healing work, that floodgate just opens up wider and wider and wider. I actually call it a channel. And when that channel opens, you are connected to all those higher realms. And then you never know what's going to come in once that happens. Now, when I say that, understand this. Because of the internal and spiritual work that I've done, I am well protected. So I'm not worried about opening up to any of these negative so-called forces that everybody thinks are out there. There's not. In any case, I'm very free in opening up my channels. And so what happened is in doing the mediumship work and the psychic work that I was doing, and even animal communication, that's as far as I had gotten at that time, all of a sudden, I started receiving communication telepathically from a group called the Interstellar Council, the Intergalactic Council. And so that right away piqued my interest now in this extraterrestrial realm and to that new consciousness of a new dimension and all new insight. And so that's when I started going more in that direction, and the information just kept coming in, flooding in more and more and more. So they got in touch with me. I didn't get in touch with them. And that happened just after I was doing a reading with somebody. I was kind of like closing up and getting myself done. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice that says to me, "We'd like to speak with you." Now, normally, if I'm getting a spirit connection, I feel, I see, I hear, I know, I use all my senses. I'm a clairol person. I used to use clairol when I was younger and didn't want the gray hair. Now I'm clairol as a psychic medium, okay? And so normally I would know that that was a deceased loved one or a guide or somebody along those lines, even the angels or anybody else who wanted to talk with me. But this was different. This was a further, deeper, of another universal kind of voice to me. And so I was like, okay, who's we? And that's when they introduced themselves. It was actually one voice speaking as a group saying, "We are the Intergalactic Council." And now, I know people are going to go nuts when I say this. I was not a Trekkie, a Star Trek fan. I'm more of a Star Wars fan. That was later on. I watched a lot of the episodes, though, and I certainly went to all of the Star Trek movies. But the Intergalactic Council, that to me was one of those Star Trek episodes, or a couple of them,
Mhm.
many of them, matter of fact, I'm sure. And I was like, well, what is the Intergalactic Council? And this being told me that there is actually a group made up of spiritual beings. Now, they told me they were in spirit, which means that they were not incarnate in physical form. They're in that dimension that we all go to once we leave our physical form. So they are not even light beings as much as they are just in spirit, not incarnate, no physical energies, pure energies. Okay. And so they said that there is an actual representative from each universe that makes up this council that helps guide the souls to and through their different incarnations and also keeps them from going to places they shouldn't go. Well, that in itself really interested me. But that's how this all started, Justin. I'm telling you, just it hit me.
Well, so that fascinates me on multiple levels, but something that happened to me a couple of years ago now. I talked to a friend of mine who is also a medium, and I'm a medium. I'm just not. I've never trained myself enough to actually uh, understand messages, or even like I can't get my brain to understand the difference between my subconscious or my inner voice compared to spirit. But I had these two marks on the webbing of my hand, one on each side, like somebody had ran a needle through the webbing in my hand. And after that had happened, it was while I was sleeping. I woke up, felt like there was somebody in the room, looked around, kind of what you expect during like a haunting or something like that. But this was not like I feel like I'm in danger. It was more so like, okay, there's somebody here, but it doesn't seem like there's anything going on. So I go back to sleep. When I wake up, that those marks are on my hand, and I have no pain in my knees like I usually do. I have no pain in my back like I usually do. And so that goes on for a while where I've got no pain, and then no anxiety. And then after a while it kind of went away where I was having those aches and pains again. My anxiety has still kind of been better, But a friend of mine said, "Hey, look, that was actually beings that are everybody's saying ETs, but the ETs that people think there are, it's actually BS. There's actually these beings that are like what you're mentioning, light beings, and they'll come back again, and they'll mark you again, and this time, it'll be permanent, and you'll be able to talk to them telepathically. And so I've been waiting. I'm like, okay, when is this gonna
I know, when is it going to happen? That is amazing. First of all, I don't know if you know anything about trigger points, or even whether it be Chinese or different
Mhm.
cultural aspects to these points. But between these areas here, it's one of the ways of getting rid of a headache. Okay, if you put pressure on them, well, what they did is they did it stronger to you real quick. Well, here's the thing: there are three levels of beings, shall we say, and that's for all of us, including humans, except humans aren't advanced enough to get beyond this being right here, okay, the physical being. But when it comes to extraterrestrials, they're the physical ones, just like us, that incarnate on their planet in their universe in a different dimension. All right, not here in this universe of ours. This
Okay.
universe here that we see through any telescope at all, the furthest that we can see, is only one universe, ours. And we're the only beings in this universe. It takes an entire universe to keep this planet the way it's supposed to be going in order for us to continue incarnating on it. It was set up that way purposely. And so each universe has its own individual planet, and there's not as many as everybody thinks. Okay. So there's the physical beings who will have their times of living. They also die. The physical body dies. They're now in spirit, which, by the way, is in the same location as we go. All right. In that location there's also levels of dimensions, and there's more advanced souls that are on the higher dimensions, and everybody else is trying to evolve up to those dimensions. Okay. So we all go there. That's the physical. Once they're out of body, they've died. Now they're spiritual. They're spirits. That's who, as a medium, we talk to as spirits on the other side.
Hmm.
Ghosts are also spirits, but ghosts are those that are trapped in the earthly dimensions, dimension 4, 5, 6, and possibly 7, right here. Heavenly dimensions go on beyond that, okay? So those are spirits, deceased loved ones, ascended masters, the God source, all of those, your higher soul, are all in that spiritual realm. Then there are the light beings. Well, we're all supposed to or capable of transfiguring into a light being. A light being is an advanced individual that's capable of taking this whole body and transfiguring it to the light source that we really are. We're still physical, but now we're a light source. Those orbs, the majority of orbs that people are seeing, Christopher Bledsoe Sr., absolutely becoming one of the most famous people that has the most documented scientifically of bringing in and seeing and connecting with orbs. They're all transfigured light beings. Back in Egypt, they were trying to teach that. The whole point of the pyramid and the sarcophagus inside the pyramid. The esophagus is something else. I was talking to somebody about that recently. That's over here, right? That actually creates a high energy and is meant to help people transfigure into light beings. Well, it's really interesting because in Jesus's journey, it shows in the Urantia and other writings that he traveled to Egypt. Well, what did he go to Egypt for? He wanted to see the Sphinx and the pyramids before he was crucified? No, he was learning transfiguration. Why? because he was going to use it 3 days after he was murdered, okay, and killed. That's what Jesus did. He transfigured into a light being, okay? So we're capable of doing that. So then these ETs can come down in orb form without spaceships. They're very advanced. They advanced to that. And in our generation, Justin, they advanced to that because before that, they were still traveling here in ships. That's how they got here. Okay. Right. But now all of a sudden, you see them more in this light form, in this orb form. Well, they can just turn themselves right back into physical beings while they are here, and then go back into light beings, go through their dimensions, and get back home in a flash. All right. So that's, chances are, what you experienced is one of those extraterrestrials who came here as an orb, a light being, a transfigured light being, came to help you and heal you, and then left, and was wanting to give you a taste of that for several reasons. Like, why do they choose some people over others? Well, I have to understand why they're coming here to start with. First and foremost, and only to help us. They are all benevolent, not malevolent. There isn't a malevolent ET around. Albert Einstein knew that. He said that in order for any being to escape their universe, they would have to have command of spiritual principles. So if you have command of spiritual principles, you're not going to be harming anyone. You're only going to be loving and helping them. As a matter of fact, what's very interesting, and recently, and I'm talking just the past few years, if anybody has heard the story of Jake Barber, if you don't know the interview of Jake Barber, look him up on YouTube because he's there, where he interviewed his job. He worked for the government contractually in collecting downed UFOs or UAPs, which is what they're calling them now. In other words, for the government, wherever there was a sighting of a spacecraft that crashed, his job was to go and collect it. Well, on his journey to collect one, he got close enough to it that all of a sudden he felt like he linked up with another being. And all he felt was pure love and beauty and joy. He also felt sadness, obviously, because that entity just crashed, and knew he felt actually a female energy, that she was not going to live long once she crashed here. She was probably injured, but he felt pure love that he cried. He cried while he was flying there to collect this craft, because when you tap into those beings, you feel nothing but pure love, because that's what it means to be spiritually advanced. So they are here helping. Way back when, 11,000 years ago, they helped us. Now, this is on record from scientists. They now know that there are 2 human DNA strands, one from Neanderthal, one from modern man. And they also know that the Neanderthal DNA strand, 3/4 of the way down, was spliced. Actually, a quarter of the way, 3/4 is the new splicing. And there was a new DNA spliced into part of the old DNA, now creating modern man. And history, and if you really read deep into it, you will learn that modern man appeared on Earth just about over 11,000 years ago, spontaneously. So it didn't evolve. We didn't come from apes. That's where the Neanderthals stopped. And the reason why they did this splicing is to hasten our evolvement. They knew we were going to be taking a really long time to go from Neanderthal to modern man if they didn't help us. So we are mostly hybrids, if you want to say it that way, okay? Then after that point, as humans, we started creating such diseases and viruses and bacterias that were attacking our bodies quicker than the body was able to evolve to heal it. This body can heal almost anything. I mean, you think about it, the viruses that we get that are floating out there on a daily basis, the immune system is incredible, right? What makes that all work? Well, there's viruses been in the air since the beginning of time. Everything was created from microscopic, amoeba all the way up to the biggest animal, right? That was all here on this planet. So they needed to help us evolve quicker so the body would not be completely destroyed. So they started abducting some people. Yes, most of the time they abducted those non-important beings. They weren't famous people. It's amazing how no superstars were ever actually abducted, right? They left them alone. It was always some people in some far off place that were abducted. Why? Because they were testing the genes, the DNA, trying to modify the genes to help us. Recently, there's a whole story about Skinwalker Ranch, right? Where the cows were mutilated. Well, they weren't mutilated. They were dissected. As a matter of fact, the scientists have even stated that when they looked at the cows that were killed and were missing parts, that it looked like they were scalpeled. And a scalpel was used to cleanly cut portions of the cattle. Why were they doing that? What are they telling us is one of the worst foods for us to eat because it's we're going to have a heart attack after a big meal with it? Red meat. Why? Why all of a sudden we can't eat red meat? We've been able to eat meat since the beginning of our existence. We started with grains and berries, and then as soon as we learned animal husbandry, we started eating meat more because it tasted really good. We were getting the nutrition we needed. We have the taste buds for it. Now all of a sudden it's killing us. Well, they're not about ready to hoist up a cow on their spaceship, so they'll take pieces of it. They will do research on it, try to figure out what it is, and then help us that way figure out how to combat what we are picking up from that red meat. They had no problems with chickens and stuff. You can take a chicken on a craft. I can even fit a chicken in a Volkswagen Beetle. You know what I mean? One of those old little itty bitty ones. I think even a mini car. Yeah, you can fit a chicken in there. But those spaceship boats are even bigger than that. Well, in any case, they got all of that to help us. Now, why come to a person like you and help heal you and not other people? Because you're going to put out the experience in a positive way. When I ask them, why are you coming to me and feeding me this information? They said, we know that you respect us. And because you are a speaker and a public figure, you're going to put out the positive version and understanding of who we are. And so that's what needs to be done now. The public needs to be educated. But those are the three levels. I know that was one question. And of course, I tell a whole story to answer one question. But those are the three levels: physical, spiritual, and then transfigured light beings. That's who we can be too. We're supposed to learn that we can do that.
Okay. Now, something that has been going around the paranormal communities and even some mainstream is Three Eye Atlas.
Oh my God, I knew you were going to ask that. I'm not even being a psychic, I knew you were going to ask that.
But what is it, or what has been communicated to you? What Three Eye Atlas is?
It's so funny, but there are always going to be people in this field, paranormal field, that number one, are going to exploit things in order for their own gain. Number two, are going to exaggerate. Number three, are going to see something negative in anything positive. But I'm going to ask your listeners and those who are watching right now, let's use a little deductive reasoning like Sherlock Holmes. Right. I just finished saying, and even if you didn't know this, you can admit that between the type of craft that they fly around in, the orbs that they're transfiguring into, these are pretty highly evolved beings, right? They're pretty expert at what they do already. Okay, so that's part one. Three-Eye Atlas is a big giant, what appears to be a rock or an asteroid, comet, whatever. It's pretty big, actually. Okay, that's two. Can you imagine an advanced being who's been flying here in an advanced technological spacecraft or transfiguring, going through different dimensions, even being able to dematerialize and fly through mountains, coming to the Earth in a big, giant, friggin' rock? Wait, I hear them now. Vince, they're trying to hide themselves. Oh, so this advanced being who's been coming to the Earth over 11,000 years and even later than that, don't know that we would be thinking that they're going to disguise themselves? And even it's been said they've been ducking out. It's been, the path has been erratic at times, as if it's trying to hide. Oh, this advanced being is now not thinking that we, the less advanced, primitive being, is knowing that they're hiding on us. Okay, can that sound like some of the most ridiculous theories or hypotheses or ideas or opinions out there? Let me tell you what this big asteroid is that they did tell me. Yes, it is from a deeper part of our universe, a part that we have never seen before. When we were all created, and then the universes were created, we were told that since we were created in the image of this omnipotent force, this powerful force, we were created in its likeness, that we would have dominion over everything physical, including any of our bodies. So anything physical also includes the planets and the whole darn universe. Okay? That asteroids we manifested from all the hatred, negativity, bombing, killing that we are doing on this planet. We are bringing in literally the chance of our own destruction. By the way, who are the ones that sent the comet here on Earth in order to level out all the dinosaurs so that modern man can appear? Because we could not live on this planet with the dinosaurs. They were overrunning it. They would have eaten us from the first moment that we came out of a cave. Okay, give me a break. Yeah. All right, so they had to be wiped out. That's already shown that humans and dinosaurs never lived on this planet at the same time. Okay, who do you think did that in order for us to incarnate here? We did. We're co-creators. We sent the asteroid here. But because we are so archaic and primitive. We're not even realizing what our capacity is as unlimited, powerful beings. And we are now drawing and creating our own possible destruction. Because quite honestly, if 3I Atlas hits any of the planets, the repercussion to this Earth would throw us right out of our evolution and away from the sun, and wherever we're done for. But nobody is thinking that except NASA's watching it. Some scientists are watching it to see how close it's going to come, where it's going to come. So yes, are they picking up different type of energy from this asteroid that's different than some of the closer stars and planets that are broken up and that is flying here, and comets? Yes, of course, because it is a deep space one. But you know what? We're in deep trouble, and we've been that way for a while. And it's year after year after year. It's not just time period after time period that we have a crisis. It used to be that we had a crisis, 10, 20, 30 years would go by before the next crisis. We'd get our stuff together, we'd pull up our pants and get everything built, and maybe we learned some things. No, it's not. It's crisis after crisis after crisis. And we think just because there's this, that we are technologically advanced, or this. Now, like Dick Tracy, we can talk to our watches, right? We think we're technologically advanced, but we're in trouble because we're using that as a barometer to our individual advancement. And we are not advanced. And that's what they tell me all the time, is that the reason why we did not advance as fast as them, simple, and you talked again, the consciousness of life, okay? When they incarnated in their universes, they focused on their spiritual growth because that's where they knew their true power laid, all right? When we incarnated here, we focused on our physical growth. That's why we got into materialism and money and power. And because of that, we became less and less advanced, and they became more and more advanced. So to them, this object is nothing. They can actually steer their spacecraft by becoming one with it telepathically. That's why you always see them with the big heads, the majority of them, the grays, the tall ones, all that big heads, big eyes, little mouths. They've evolved enough to know how to use this gift that we created in order to live in this physical world. They are great receivers of a higher consciousness. And right now I'm teaching more about that, not just tapping in to teach you how to become a psychic or to teach you how to become a medium, but I want to open you up to all the consciousness levels, including them and what they're feeding into our world now in order to help and save us. I forgot what your question was. I hope that answered it.
No, it was, yeah, just what 3I Atlas is.
There we go, 3I Atlas, yeah.
So, here's a good question for that then. You know, we're all, I should say not all, a good majority of people are practicing different religions. And I know that's different than spirituality or spiritualism. Now, even those people that are practicing religion are not a good spiritual, at least, sense. So what, from their perspective, what is becoming spiritual or being aligned with your spiritual self? What does that look like?
That's a great question. First of all, spirituality, let's define what it is. It is your understanding of who you are as a being, your relationship to others, and your relationship to this earth, and your relationship to a higher force. That's what spiritual concepts incorporate, all of that understanding. Religion was humans' way, and it was actually man's way, literally man, interpretation of how to practice and teach those spiritual concepts. and they became very corrupted and changed throughout time and history, because the words that we read today aren't even the actual words that the wise people wrote that had these understandings, right? And so it's been translated through time, and it's gotten very warped and so very diluted. Spirituality and religion now, it's kind of separated itself, because they always teach about an outside deity and being. God is outside of us. We actually made him into more of a physical feature like us, with the white hair and the beard and human, right? And all of that, rather than making us our image into his, because we couldn't figure out what that image looked like. When we came here, we forget everything. We forget everything about our spiritual nature until we can tap into it and learn to tap into it and awaken it, okay? Well, that separation is what caused all of the problems, because the more we separated ourselves from this force, the less we felt that we were important, that we were special, that we were magnificent, that we were divine, and most important, that we were loved. Love is like the force, the total force of the spiritual body as well as the physical body, okay? Because it does have an effect on us. Those people who do not feel love actually change their biology, because again, that dominion over everything physical aspect. So you have to understand that though you may be, and there are good people practicing religion. Now, though, here's my theory. I don't believe that religion makes a good person.
Right.
I believe that a good person makes religion look good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, because if that was the theory, if religion made people good, then we wouldn't have those condemners who profess that they are deep spiritual Christian beings, because they don't do anything in accordance with what Jesus taught. They do what they want to believe Jesus taught, right? Their own interpretation. So religion doesn't make a person makes religion or spirituality. It's not a great shift, because I've worked, and even now, I've done thousands of readings for people, and so many of them, and even my students and those I've spoken in front of, that said that they were either really Catholic or Jewish or just Christian in general, even Muslim, can understand when I'm teaching it in the way that I teach, and I speak it as a spiritual concept. I can understand that. I can understand that. And when I use the right words, look, if you go to a person who's a Catholic and you tell them that you're psychic, all right, they're going to, think that you're the devil. Then actuality, they're all wrong about that to start with. It was again, one of those teachings that was a misinterpretation. Jesus did say in the Bible, in the New Testament, do not seek out a necromancer. Do not seek out a necromancer. They are in line with the devil. Now, there was no devil, so he was talking about that they're not good people. Okay, what's a necromancer? If you look up the word necromancer, it doesn't say psychic. It says wizard and witch. Okay, because back in those days, people went to other people to place curses on people. When they wanted to be the king or they wanted the lover, they would go seek out a witch, right, who was able to conjure up things and put a curse and give you a potion or anything like that. Why would Jesus say don't seek out a psychic when he was Jewish and he believed in the prophets and spoke of the prophets, Elijah and all the other prophets? They were able to foresee and speak with God and hear God's guidance to them, which is what guided the kings back in Israel during that time. So the prophets were very famous beings, and he did not put down any of those prophets, because he himself was Jewish, right? And so there was nothing against prophets then. but definitely against warlocks and wizards. So their misinterpretation of that is what keeps them from opening up their intuition. But if you refer to it as intuition, now all of a sudden they're thinking that this is a scientific human part of a being. Yes, your intuition. And you can learn how to just trust your intuition more and get gut feelings. So when you speak to them on a different level and you keep the woo-woo out of it, they can very easily transition over to the spiritual realm. I've got that. But let's face it, there are some habits that are ingrained, like I refer to Yahweh, Yeshua, all of them, Elohim, as God. I say God. I just say God because that was my Catholic upbringing and what I was used to. A lot of spiritual teachers that I know today still have a practice of saying God, wear a cross, whatever, within them. That doesn't mean that they now have narrowed down their beliefs or they're throwing away some of spirituality or metaphysics. They're just incorporating it into what they already know. And that's the other part is metaphysics. That has also got a bum rap for that word. Metaphysics means beyond the physical. That's all it means. But because of New Age, that really, yes, it opened up a doorway of new understanding and consciousness for people, but it also made things negative and they put labels on that word metaphysics, right? Psychics come from, mediums come from, you're talking that you can converse with God directly, you're a heathen, or that you can manifest anything you want in your life. No, God gives that to you. You're a heathen, right? So the concepts, depending upon the way they're taught, is going to determine how a person can now believe, whether they are skeptics, atheists, or any other religion. They can very easily open up to the concept of compassion, love, kindness, caring. Those are God traits and spiritual traits. How can those not be already in every religion? Non-judgmentalness, acceptance. All right. So as soon as we say those words, we know that that is a higher understanding. And that's actually what our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters are telling us we have to get back to in order to save this planet. Love and kindness. And it's the only thing that will turn it around, but it has to start with each individual.
Do they foresee this happening maybe in our lifetimes?
Nobody foresees anything happening anymore, quite honestly. I have asked the highest of high, the advanced, the ascended masters, God itself, and all I get from all of them, if they had shoulders, is we're co-creators. It's in our hands. They have no idea what's going to transpire right now. The only thing that God does know was the beginning and the end. That's why he calls himself the Alpha and the Omega, because that's what it created, the beginning and the end. He wanted a guarantee that eventually everything would be okay. The interim, because we're co-creators, he left over to us. And so whatever we do with this, look, everybody has to know, listen, I always sound like Debbie Downer and Negative Nelly over here, but you cannot heal what you don't see needs healing. So I point out what needs to be healed. But don't get me wrong, we are in the end going to be fine, incredible, and well. It's been written about in the book of Revelation. Wherever we end up over there, it's going to be fine. Okay? It's not over there that we need to worry about. It's over here that we need to worry about because there's too much suffering. There's too much hurt and too much anger, which is begatting and causing more anger and more outlashing. I've always taught that you can look at a person to the level and the degree that they are lashing out at their brother and sister, is the level and degree that they've been hurt and despised themselves. Because you can never externalize what you don't feel about yourself internally. That's why I always teach self-healing to grow anything, to grow consciously, to grow that awareness and a higher awareness. You must heal yourself from those pains. They've been passed down from generation to generation. Just because two adults wind up expecting a child doesn't heal them automatically, so they no longer damage the child that they're going to be raising. They're going to pass down whatever issues they have. That was actually my advice when I was a psychotherapist and practicing couples therapy. And the two would come in and ask, we want to have a family. What advice do you give us to be good parents? And I would tell them, take care of your own crap. I promise you, it'll get passed down some way or another if you harbor it within you. But if you heal yourselves, you will connect to that higher understanding automatically. And from that point on, you will be teaching your children how magnificent that they really are and how to connect to their higher selves so that they could create the life of their dreams and help heal this world. It's always about the self. So when you look at those people, don't despise them and hate them. Yes, we have to try to stand in the positive and feed into the positive energy pool, right? You don't want to feed into the negative energy pool by hating them. And the only way to stop that hate is to have compassion. And if you look at them and have compassion towards the worst person, okay, Hitler was sexually molested by his father and his mother until he was 13 years old. Osama bin Laden was sibling 51. You don't think that they had a lot of pain and hurt? Hitler was never trying to conquer the world. He was trying to conquer himself. He only used the world as a means that he thought that if he did that, it was going to make things better on the inside. Never did, obviously, right? Same with Osama bin Laden. To the extent and the extreme that people lash out at their brother and sister is the extent and the extreme that they despise themselves. It's the story of Cain and Abel. Why did Cain kill Abel? He didn't feel connected to Adam and Eve, to mom and dad. He looked at his brother and he thought that mom and dad loved him more. So because of Cain's belief he was disconnected, he felt abandoned, he felt neglected, and that turned into resentment, which turned into anger and rage. And when he looked at his brother, who felt joyous and loved and lovable, he began to despise that because he was jealous of that. And so he killed Abel. Well, that story was written to tell us what we're capable of. When you're detached from that higher self, you feel abandoned, you feel alone, you feel nobody cares about you, you feel unlovable, and that turns into anger, which turns into rage. And so that's what you see in the world today. It has nothing to do with power. Power is translated into, well, I must be somebody of worth if I have power. But in order to be going after just power means you feel unworthy. That's what a narcissist is, by the way. A narcissist is not a person who thinks that he's great about that himself and has these grandiose beliefs about him or herself. A narcissist is one who absolutely despises themselves and think they're pieces of dirt. Their defensive mind, in order to help them function in life, creates a whole different story. That's what my book is about. The Secret That's Holding You Back is that protective mechanism that suppresses the real beliefs people have about themselves. And that's why they're not manifesting what they want to manifest, Justin, is because they don't believe what they think they believe. Our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters are trying to help us awaken. So don't be surprised that one does show up real soon for you. Accept more and believe more and don't be afraid and welcome them. And you can learn how to actually communicate with them and bring them to you.
Well, I've been working really hard this past year even to just open myself up more and start reaching out because even though I may not think I'm hearing them, I know that I am, not just being my spirit guides, all of that stuff. Um so what is like the one message that these beings would want our watchers and listeners to hear?
It's one of the most trite sayings, messages that you will ever hear, but one of the most important ones. Before you can believe in anything else, you must believe in yourself. Believe in and love yourself. That's the starting point. And you need to do the work that helps you get to that point. My message and my ways of doing it are very simple principles, but they're very difficult practices because they're so ingrained. We're so ingrained with the I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not lovable enough, I'm not likable enough, any of those I'm nots, right? And all they say is it starts with self-belief and self-love. That is the principle of all spiritual aspects. You cannot even know the God force until you know yourself first. That's why you can't just practice it outside of yourself. You have to practice it within yourself. That's their greatest message. The second part of that greatest message is when you do that, you will automatically extend that understanding out onto your neighbor. As a matter of fact, their message is exactly the same as Jesus's message was on the night of the Last Supper and his last day when he was arrested. He said, my two highest commandments are love God with all your heart and all your might, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, those words were actually changed and alterated because he spoke in Aramaic language, and it's almost impossible for us to get a true translation. But what he really was saying is, love the God you are and connected to with all your heart and your might. And as you love yourself, you will then love your neighbor. And that's the message that we need to understand to get anything done here and healing here. Because when you've got two or more people gathered in that understanding, in that light, in that name, there's where power will be. And you can see that at any event that you go to. You can maybe on your end, while you're doing this, you're putting this out there to your watchers, your viewers, and your listeners, right? And hopefully you can even feel part of their energy in watching this program, and hopefully they can feel each other's. But man, when you gather at a live event and you've got an auditorium filled with these people and you're sharing these messages, they are automatically heightened and they're automatically wanting to share that with each other. Isn't it true that when you are by yourself and you happen to see a really good movie, what do? You can't wait to share it with somebody. Oh, man, you call up your friend, maybe a family member. You got to see this movie. It is incredible. And you know what? When you go to see it, let me know. I want to watch it again, but I want to come with you. Why do we do that? Because not only can we experience our own joy, right? We can experience somebody else's too. And so we want to be there and share in their experience of that incredible movie. So if we do that on that level, could you imagine what we do on a higher level? I've been at too many events, and I'm sure you have too, Justin, where I've seen that. People exchanging phone numbers, becoming great friends just from one weekend, a positive weekend from one of these positive summits and conferences. That is absolutely amazing. And that's what we need to keep going. It's actually what a protest does. When you get a gathering of people, thousands of them, even just hundreds of them, and they're all there for the same positive reason, not just to put something down, but to raise an awareness up, all of a sudden, everybody else is hyped about it too. That can happen in a negative way, but it absolutely happens in a positive way. And then the power and the energy is so healing, people walk away feeling better that they've been there than before they got there. So that's the message that they want to share with everybody is heal and love yourself, because we are magnificent, we are divine. And when we get to truly believe in that, Justin, we are going to feel that way about our brothers and sisters and share that with them and put out into the positive energy pool rather than that negative energy pool. That's what their message is.
Awesome. All right, we are about that time to let you go, so I want to give you the chance to tell everybody where they can find you, find your work. The mic's all yours.
All they have to do is come to vincentgenna.com. You can see it there. That's with a Genna. You can connect with me there, set up a reading with me privately. Also, you can connect to my podcast, The Genna Effect. I've got a lot of different informative podcasts on there and even interviews as well. Neil Donald Walsh is one of the last ones. He's just a very well-known person in our field today. And so there's all ways of connecting with me. Even if you just sign up on my website, you'll know when I'm doing an event. I've got wonderful PSI games. Oh, man, over here in North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina, at the end of July, the beginning of August. It's a 3-day event where there's contestants. Yes, there's psychics, there's mediums, but you will see them in a scientific testing format, see the abilities that we have just through those people. And then there's amazing speakers. I'm going to be there myself, giving a lecture, a workshop, and you will experience things you've never experienced before to give you an undeniable evidence that you are more than just a physical being. So connect with me at vincentgenna.com.
All right, Vincent, thank you so much for being on ParaTruth Radio.
Justin, thank you so much for having me here. And let me just share with you, great things are going to continue to come for you because we need you. You are the lighthouses of the world. Without you putting out the light into the world, there's going to be a lot of ships crashing into shore. So you allow us to get that light out there with you. So thank you so much for that.
All right. You have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right, folks. There it is. The best way to get to that light being love, light, and peace. Make sure you're checking out all the great things going on here on ParaTruth Reborn. We got a lot of great stuff coming up for you. But as we said at the beginning, this has been a live show on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and United Public Radio Network. Until next week, folks, where you will find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin. Talk to you guys later.